There was a spark, a loud pop, and then the most glorious shriek I'd ever heard from over the fence. Diane, my entitled neighbor, screaming like her designer sandals had just burst into flames. Technically, it was her daughter's e-scooter charger that caught fire, and technically, she had it coming. You don't steal power from an electrical engineer and expect to skate by. Not after I warned her, not after the HOA brushed me off, and definitely not after she laughed in my face, saying, "It's just a little juice, chill out." Oh, I chilled out, all right. I chilled out her entire backyard with enough voltage to turn her off-brand e-scooter into a glorified paperweight. But let me back up. You need to understand how we got to this perfect, explosive moment of karmic justice. It didn't start with sparks. It started with a tiny blip on my home energy monitor. I'm not just some guy with a voltmeter and a chip on his shoulder. I'm a certified systems engineer who designs power infrastructure for data centers. Electricity is my poetry. So, when my solar inverter started logging phantom drains during off-peak hours, I noticed. Most people wouldn't, but I'm not most people. I live in a quiet suburb where folks boast about their manicured lawns and artisanal kombucha. I keep to myself, tinkering with my home grid, watching for anomalies. That week, I'd spotted something odd. Every night between 1 o'clock and 3 a.m., there was a 1.9 kilowatt-hours dip that didn't match any of my appliances, not the HVAC, not the pool pump, not my battery backup cycling. It was something external. That's when I started suspecting the leech next door, Diane. You know, the type oversized sunglasses, a voice that carries like a megaphone, and zero grasp of boundaries. She'd moved in 2 years ago after a messy divorce, and ever since, it's been a circus of bad choices. Wine-soaked book clubs, HOA violations that somehow never stuck, and a knack for inventing neighborhood rules. She once berated a kid for skateboarding too near her rose bushes. Lately, her obsession was this tricked-out electric e-scooter she'd bought for her teenage daughter, Mia. It was loud, garish, and worst of all, it ran on electricity. I first noticed the cord while pruning my shrub sand orange extension cable slithering over the back fence like a sneaky vine. It seemed to originate from her side and vanished behind my garden shed. I blinked. No way, I thought. I didn't have any outdoor outlets back there. Unless no, she wouldn't be that brazen. That night, I shut off all my exterior breakers except one, just to test. The next morning, my log showed a dip at 2:08 a.m. I traced the fence line, and sure enough, the cord was gone, retracted, hidden, but not before I snapped photos. I decided to confront her, thinking maybe it was a mistake, maybe Mia plugged in without realizing. I rang her bell the next day. Diane answered in athleisure, sunglasses perched on her head, sipping a smoothie like she was auditioning for a reality show. I mentioned the power drain, asked if anyone in her house had used my outlet. She smiled, all teeth, and said, "Oh, that? Yeah. We figured it was no big deal, just a quick charge while our garage panel's being fixed. You've got solar, right? You don't even notice it. You don't even notice it. That's not how electricity or consent works." I explained it was theft, however small, and it messed with my system's balance. Her response? She patted my arm like I was a fussy child and said, "Relax, you're such a nerd. It's not like we're siphoning your gas tank." I walked away before I said something I'd regret, but my brain was already in overdrive. I reported the theft to the HOA. They said they'd look into it. 3 days later, I got a warning letter for fostering neighbor discord and unauthorized modifications to shared property lines. Apparently, Diane claimed I'd rigged hazardous devices along the fence and threatened her family with electrocution. I was floored, but I wasn't about to play defense. I'm not confrontational by nature, but if you tap into my grid without asking and then lie about it, you've entered my arena. Diane didn't know what she'd unleashed. She thought I was just a quiet guy with solar panels. She didn't know I designed fail-safe systems for military-grade servers, or that I'd built a hospital's backup grid from scrap parts and sheer willpower. And she definitely didn't know I was about to turn her daughter's midnight joyrides into a very expensive light show. I started sketching that night. The plan, a decoy outlet she couldn't resist, wired to a perfectly legal, perfectly safe, but utterly ruinous surprise. It had to fry her charger without harming anyone. It had to be subtle, invisible, and personal because she hadn't just stolen power, she'd mocked my craft. I installed the fake outlet on my side of the fence, angled to look neglected, like I'd carelessly left it wired to the shed's junction. It was tempting unguarded, live easy. But it was connected to a tuned impedance circuit that would zap any charger drawing over 3 amps. No household appliance would trigger it, but an e-scooter charger? Oh, it'd be toast. I set the trap, watched, and waited. 3 nights later, the cord was back, plugged in. I watched from my workshop, sipping tea. At 2:19 a.m., the log spiked. The circuit did its job. A bright blue flash, a loud pop, and then the piece de resistance. Diane's shriek, slicing the night like a banshee at a bad karaoke bar. Mia ran out in pajamas, scrambling to figure out why her precious e-scooter was puffing smoke like a cheap fog machine. I'd never grinned so wide. That was just the beginning. Diane thought she could pilfer from an engineer and walk away, but the voltage she fried was nothing compared to what was coming. When the HOA doubled down and backed her, they made a fatal mistake. They'd picked a fight with the wrong grid. The morning after the great backyard surge was a spectacle. I woke to Diane stomping around in flip-flops, muttering about vandalism and calling the fire department. I stood at my kitchen window, coffee in hand, watching like it was a live soap opera. The cord had vanished, the e-scooter was covered with a tarp like a crime scene, and Diane was on her phone, no doubt spinning a tale of how her daughter was nearly killed by my booby-trapped outlet. Except there was no near-death, just a fried charger and a mother who didn't grasp that karma sometimes comes with a circuit breaker. I wasn't celebrating yet. That was only Act 1. She hadn't learned, and by noon, I had a visitor. A guy in a polo shirt and khakis showed up, clipboard in hand, wearing the smug look of someone who thought they were about to drop the hammer. "You can't install unauthorized electrical devices along a shared boundary," he said, skipping introductions. Diane had complained to the HOA again, and now they were here to lecture me about hazardous installations endangering the community. I bit back a laugh as he misquoted bylaws, most unrelated to electricity and all tied to Diane's creative spin on the HOA handbook. I explained the outlet was on my property, legally installed, wired to code. What I didn't mention was its non-lethal surge loop, designed to trip under high current, safe for people, pets, or stray raccoons, but catastrophic for sensitive electronics. He scribbled on his clipboard, mumbled about further review, and left. I offered him a muffin. He declined. I knew this wasn't over. Diane would escalate, entitled people always do. So, I escalated too, not with pettiness, but with precision. I wasn't waiting for another cord to snake over my fence. I needed to know the instant it happened. Back to the drawing board, I built a smarter trap. First, I upgraded the fake outlet. The original circuit worked, but I wanted real-time data. I added a hidden data logger, tucked inside a weathered birdhouse, connected to my home server. Anytime something plugged in, it'd timestamp the event, capture the voltage draw, and ping my phone. If the draw crossed a threshold, the outlet would deliver a timed voltage spike, not enough to spark a fire, but enough to make any charger go poof. I tested it on an old hedge trimmer twice. Next, I installed motion-triggered cameras, disguised as garden lights, left over from an unfinished security project. One faced the outlet, another watched Diane's yard where the e-scooter parked, a third covered the fence line. All feeds routed to my server, backed up to the cloud. If Diane so much as breathed near that outlet, I'd have HD evidence. The real genius was the decoy extension cord. I draped it over my fence, coiled to look like I'd gotten sloppy after yard work. It was plugged into the dummy outlet, but its wiring ran through a buried surge trip circuit under my rose bushes. If Diane or Mia yanked it for another free charge, they'd get another surprise. 3 nights passed with no action. I almost thought she'd wised up. But on the 4th night, at 1:47 a.m., my phone buzzed. Power draw detected. 2.8 kilowatt hours, rising. Then, surge threshold exceeded. Event triggered. I opened the live feed. A flash lit the camera. The cord twitched. The charger sparked. The e-scooter let out a faint whine, like it was giving up the ghost. Mia, in a tank top, stumbled back, looking like a startled cat. She yanked the cord, but it was too late. Smoke curled from the charger, not as dramatic as the first time, but enough to drive the point home. I leaned back, smiling. The system worked flawlessly. By morning, the cord was gone, but the damage was done. Twice now, and I had video, timestamps, geotags, logs. I didn't wait for another HOA fine. I printed screenshots, compiled logs, and marched to their office. The receptionist, Linda, flipped through them, eyes widening. You're saying she plugged into your outlet without permission? Twice, I said. I've got logs, footage, and bylaws section 8B, unauthorized utility access. Linda's lips pursed. She knew the rule, but Diane was chummy with board members. This wouldn't be simple. We'll need to review, she said. In the meantime, remove any outdoor outlets to avoid escalation. I leaned in. Linda, this is an HOA that fines people for fence paint, but lets Diane run an illegal hookup across my property. I've been patient, but you don't understand the system I'm running. I could go off-grid for 6 months if I wanted. I don't need your outlet policy, I need you to enforce the rules. Or I'll take this to the city utility board and file for theft. She blinked, mouth opening, then closing. Your move, I said and left. That evening, Diane stormed to my porch, no smoothie, no sunglasses, just rage. She demanded to know what I'd done to her e-scooter. I said I had no clue what she meant. She yelled that Mia was traumatized. I suggested Mia stop stealing electricity. She threatened to sue. I said I had footage, logs, and an engineering degree that begged to differ. Then I handed her a USB stick. What's this? She asked. Everything you need to know. You picked the wrong neighbor, I said, and shut the door. She didn't knock again, but I knew it wasn't over. Entitled people don't quit after one loss. She'd retaliate. And when she did, I'd be ready with more than a surge circuit. I'd have the truth, the law, and a neighborhood of witnesses. Because it turned out, I wasn't the only one Diane was stealing from. 3 days after I gave Diane the USB, the real fireworks started, not literal ones. Those had already lit up her yard, but the social kind. She didn't take the hint. Instead of backing off, she doubled down, suburban tyrant style. A police cruiser rolled into my driveway. The officer was courteous but firm. Diane had filed a report, claiming I'd installed a dangerous electrical device that endangered her family. I asked if she mentioned plugging into my outlet on my property without permission, with footage to prove it. He blinked. She didn't mention that. I invited him in, pulled up the footage, and walked him through it. Mia plugging in, logs showing power siphoning, the second zap after the first charger fried. I showed the outlet schematics wired to code, rigged to trip under high load, safe for humans, lethal for thieves. The officer leaned back, scratching his head. Wow, you're not messing around. No, officer, I said. They are, and they're dragging the law into their tantrum. He closed his notepad. From what I see, she's got no case. This is utility theft, plain and simple. I'll write it up. If she pushes, you've got everything to protect yourself. But honestly, this usually dies at the paperwork stage. I thanked him. As he left, I saw Diane across the street, arms crossed, sipping what was probably her 6th latte, staring like she was daring me to step out. I didn't give her the satisfaction. I had bigger plans. The HOA wasn't done. The next day, a letter arrived, gold embossed like they were a medieval guild, not a pack of nosy retirees. It claimed I violated Section 12, unauthorized electrical installations posing a community hazard. It came with a $500 fine and a mandatory inspection notice. Now I was mad. I filed a counter-complaint, backed with photos, logs, videos, and a technical breakdown. I CC'd the city's building inspector and the utility board. If the HOA wanted to play serious, I'd bring in the adults. Then something unexpected happened. Neighbors started approaching me. First was Mike, the guy with the fancy barbecue pit 2 doors down. Then Ellen, who always nodded but rarely spoke. Then the Nguyen family, who ran a bakery from home. They asked odd questions. Ever notice your porch lights flicker overnight? Do your sprinklers ever reset randomly? Did Diane ever ask to use your outlets? That last one hit me. I asked if they'd had power issues. Mike said his outdoor fridge kept losing chill at night. Ellen mentioned her patio lights blinking around 2 a.m. The Nguyen's had a freezer thaw out weeks ago from a mystery breaker trip. It clicked. Diane wasn't just stealing from me. She was running a neighborhood-wide power heist. I invited them over, showed my setup, explained how I tracked usage, and trapped her. When I played the footage of Mia sneaking into my yard, they gasped. Mike laughed. I knew she was shady, but this is next level. We started a group chat. What's up with Diane? It had 10 members by evening, 25 by nightfall. Diane had been siphoning from half the block for months, garden outlets, patio ports, even a guy's RV hookup while he was away. No one had proof until now. We organized. Neighbors locked their outlets with covers or boxes. I helped Mike rig a smart monitor. Ellen let me set a decoy cord at her place. It wasn't just revenge, it was justice. We were done with Diane's smugness, her manipulation, her belief that rules didn't apply to her. The HOA meeting was usually a snooze debates over mailbox fonts and deck stains. Not this time. We showed up in force, armed with USBs, screenshots, logs. One by one, we presented Diane's theft, the footage, the police report I handed to the president, Carl, in a crisp folder. Diane sat up front, arms crossed, jaw tight, looking like a cornered raccoon. She tried to deflect. They're exaggerating. It's hearsay. They're jealous. But Carl shifted in his seat. Even he couldn't ignore the evidence. Then the bombshell. One neighbor had pulled their power bills for the year, showing spikes when Diane got her e-scooter. Another matched breaker logs to her late-night parties. We built a bulletproof case. Diane stood, screaming we were harassing her, claiming she had a right to community power since her HOA dues were so high. The room erupted. Even Carl couldn't shield her. The board voted to suspend her HOA privileges, discussed fines, and mentioned a restraining order. Diane stormed out, nearly toppling the refreshment table. But there was more. Diane hadn't just used stolen power for the e-scooter. She'd been hosting backyard bashes, string lights, mini fridges, a karaoke machine all plugged into neighbors' outlets. Her yard was a parasitic festival, and I had footage. The storm was far from over. The fallout from the HOA meeting marked a turning point. What started as a neighborly nuisance ballooned into a case of coordinated utility theft with serious implications. Diane's actions weren't random. They showed a calculated pattern of exploiting infrastructure that wasn't hers. I took a deeper dive, integrating smart monitors across affected properties with neighbors' consent. The data, synced and mapped, revealed surges consistent with external charging equipment, timed with footage of Mia moving between yards, often under flimsy excuses like fetching a frisbee. I analyzed power phase fluctuations, spotting transient voltage drops in the neighborhood's subgrid signs of high-amperage devices like e-scooter chargers, not standard home use. This wasn't just a civil issue. It was potentially criminal misuse of utility access. I sent my report to a city energy auditor, who confirmed its weight. What began as neighbor-to-neighbor theft now qualified as third-party utility fraud under municipal code. Unauthorized, unmetered electricity use, exceeding a threshold, could lead to criminal charges and restitution. Diane's theft, spanning multiple homes, totaled over 3,200 kilowatt-hours in 4 months. Neighbors' testimonies added fuel: mysterious cords across lawns, lights left on in sheds, breakers tripping. One neighbor's smart irrigation system cycled off during brownouts tied to Diane's parties. Drone footage and security camera luminance analysis pinned her lighting and audio gear: string lights, bass amps, drink coolers, karaoke drawing at least 2.3 kilowatts per hour, all through stolen connections routed over fences, under bushes, even into a rewired sprinkler box. With this, I worked with neighbors to file a formal complaint with the city utility board, requesting an audit of neighborhood energy. A private attorney for one family drafted a civil claim for damages. The strategy was multi-pronged: pursue Diane for restitution, refer the case to law enforcement, and push the HOA to tighten bylaws on utility theft. Diane seemed oblivious to the consequences, framing the response as a personal vendetta. She called it neighborhood fascism in a rant outside the clubhouse. Her words didn't dent the data. The HOA, sensing its reputation was on the line, held an emergency meeting. They dropped their passive stance, moving to limit liability. Diane was stripped of committee roles, banned from communal amenities, and ordered to remove unauthorized electrical lines. A certified letter from the Energy Authority hit her mailbox, citing meter tampering and utility theft under City Code 4.3.7, with a home inspection request. She ignored it, triggering a subpoena. As word spread, neighbors' frustration turned to vindication. Even those unaffected voiced disgust at Diane's entitlement. The utility board's analysis pegged her back-billed energy at $2,000, plus HOA fines, legal fees, and violations. The documentation 60-plus pages of screenshots, legal citations, energy profiles, and impact summaries was ironclad. Diane never apologized. Even with overwhelming evidence, she doubled down on denial. But denial wasn't a defense, it was an admission she'd underestimated her neighbor's resolve. We didn't react with tantrums. We responded with precision, documentation, and unity. This could have been avoided with one conversation, one request. But entitlement, unchecked, breeds its own downfall, dismantled one data point at a time. In the weeks after Diane's unraveling, the neighborhood transformed. People waved with genuine smiles, not wary glances. The "What's Up with Diane" chat became a hub for garden tips, event plans, and memes about rogue extension cords. We'd bonded through her chaos, turning a disconnected suburb into a united front. Diane's yard fell silent. The e-scooter was sold, rumors said, to cover restitution and legal bills. The karaoke machine, lights, and speakers vanished, replaced by an odd collection of lawn flamingos, as if she thought quirky decor could erase her reputation as a power thief. Mia, once the queen of the cul-de-sac, was relegated to yard chores, mowing lawns and pulling weeds. Her swagger was gone, replaced by a quiet shuffle. She avoided eye contact, as if she too felt the weight of crossed lines. The HOA faced its own reckoning. After Diane's exposure, board members resigned or were ousted. New elections saw real turnout. Neighbors who never cared about bylaws showed up with ideas. A retired paramedic, Carla, became president, drafting a charter banning utility theft, authorizing complaint inspections, and mandating fines for tampering. It set clear rules on power setups near property lines and required inspection tags for outdoor systems. I was offered a spot on the safety committee but declined, agreeing to consult instead. Carla got IT. I wasn't in it for clout. I just wanted a neighborhood free of Diane's nonsense. Residents upgraded their systems. I helped install tamper-proof outlets and taught others to monitor usage. Some joked I should start VoltSafe, a security business. I laughed, but the idea of turning this into something bigger lingered. Diane's final blow was isolation, not eviction, but a fall from her self-built throne. The city fined her for theft, the HOA billed her for violations, and neighbors shunned her. She tried to reclaim her persona, dragging a hose across her yard in a neon tracksuit, humming loudly. No one cared. She blasted music from a weak speaker. The group chat noted, "Diane's at it again," and moved on. She couldn't stir drama without power, literal or social. I checked my cameras less as weeks passed. The decoy outlet sat untouched, my logs clean. I considered dismantling it, but kept it as a symbol not of war, but of vigilance. One day, Diane approached while I was tweaking my solar array. No sunglasses, no strut, just fatigue. "Hey," she said. I turned. "What is it?" She hesitated. "I owe you an apology." I stared, unmoved. For what? The theft? The lies? The police report? The HOA drama? She blinked, not expecting bluntness. "All of it," she mumbled. "I messed up." I didn't respond. She cleared her throat. "I thought it was harmless." "It's never harmless when you take what isn't yours," I said. "Especially not repeatedly." She nodded, turned, and shuffled back, slower, quieter. I didn't forgive her then, didn't fully buy it. But maybe it was a start. Maybe she was learning that she drained more than electricity. That evening, I sat on my porch, tea in hand, watching the sunset. The sky glowed orange, the air still. No e-scooter buzz, no rogue cords, no spikes on my monitor, just silence and wind in the trees. Neighbors waved. A kid biked by, no motors. I smiled. Peace, I realized, isn't something you wait for. Sometimes, you design it, wire it carefully, guard it fiercely. And if someone tries to steal it, you give them a charge they'll never forget.